Hi, welcome to Lecture 2 of Marketing Analytics. This lecture, we're going to focus on customer satisfaction and value. Just a quick recap. Last lecture, we looked at the marketing analytics perspectives in terms of product and brand, while this particular lecture, we're going to be focusing more on the customer satisfaction and value. So some of the learning objectives I would like to take you through would be understanding the evolution of customer satisfaction, introducing the Kano model to you to understand how customers perceive the differentiation of product features, a little bit on customer satisfaction research, composite loyalty measures, as well as how do we use regression to look into key driver analysis. So, to begin with, we need to first understand that it is always cheaper to retain a customer than actually to acquire one, because the longer that this customer stays, then the more this person will spend, and therefore revenue will grow. And of course, when you have customers who are loyal, your cost declines in terms of trying to make more marketing, and then your profitability soars. But on the other hand, businesses tend to lose customers at a rate of 15 to 50% because when you lose customers, then your revenue will decline and your cost per customer increases, as well as your profits will plummet, and finally your staff gets demotivated, and that is kind of going to affect your business. So just to give you a bit of understanding about what it means to understand about the evolution of customer satisfaction. You start out by giving something that customer wants, so you advertise and then you make sure that whatever that you give the customer, you deliver what you promise. It's basically just meeting the minimum standards and conforming to quality. Now, as time goes by, the customer satisfaction will demand more, and therefore you not only provide what the customer wants, but you also must make sure that you respond to customer complaints. Moving on, you will see that as the customer stays longer with you, if you want the customer to be loyal, then you have to find out what are the competitive analysis of the customer in terms of are they looking elsewhere, and are you providing the stuff that they need so that they don't look elsewhere. So this is where you have to look at the measures of the key drivers that drives their loyalty and understand how to retain the customers. And of course, at the height of it is to engage your customers so that they find the value in them and to really reap the customer value benefits. So it's all about creating value for every single customer. Make sure that your organization is realigned and understanding the impact on the total business and outperform competitors using your customer value analysis. This is how we move from measuring to managing. Now, Nielsen has said that this is what we mean by moving from the old economy to the new economy. Now, in the new economy, conformance to quality remains important, although it is not no longer the main differentiation of from in terms of from one brand to another brand as much as it was used in the old economy. Now in the new economy, it's about how to retain your customers so that they become valuable and reap the benefits of each customer value. Now, as I mentioned, Nielsen has come out with a set of standards, or what we call the evolution of customer satisfaction management. So the same thing, if you were to superimpose, it's just basically about setting standards, ensure that the services meet the standards, and this is conformance to loyalty. Now, then if you want to measure customer satisfaction, you need to monitor client complaints, conduct client satisfactions as often as you possibly can by taking surveys and take actions based on those feedback. In order for you to retain their customer loyalty, you must make sure that the customer satisfaction studies that measures these drivers to client satisfactions and take actions based on the performance of important attributes. So for example, like if a client feels or a customer feels that there are certain aspects about the product features that they don't like, then you must take action. And you need to find a way to measure what are the attributes that they like and they don't like. Finally, in order to set customer value, you got to measure the performance based on the value delivered to a client. So setting objectives in terms of value creation, like for example, return on investments and research recommendations, what are the marketing actions that you need to take, as well as measuring values created by these actions. Value the objectives approved by clients and value the delivered appraised by clients. Now, under the service profit chain, we know that there are two very major voices when it comes to client satisfaction. And that is, of course, the employee, which we will have to manage retention and productivity, which ultimately will also affect customer satisfaction, which then will ultimately lead to revenue growth and profitability, and finally, shareholder value. So never forget that in the service profit chain, you must always remember to take note of the voice of the employee as well as the voice of the customer. Now, in the Kano model, I just like to give you a little bit of understanding of what it means to create a differentiating product in terms of the features. Every single customer starts out with an unfulfilled need, right? The performance actually drives up from the dissatisfied quadrant or unfulfilled quadrant to the satisfied and fulfilled quadrant. So a customer starts out by looking at if the basic, sorry, if the basic needs are not fulfilled, okay, for example, then the customer over time will become dissatisfied, as you can see from the Kano model here. But on the other hand, if you meet a need that is unfulfilled, and then you make sure that you bring that satisfaction to a point of excitement, that's how you retain your customers. So this is where we mean by getting people to move from basic uh, unfulfilled needs to excitement, so they become exciters and delighters. But on the other hand, if you move from not fulfilling a person's needs and then giving them more cause to complain, then they will become dissatisfiers, and of course they feel that their expected quality is not being met. Okay? Now, so for example, what I mean by using this would be, if let's say you're talking about basic dissatisfier or hygiene factors in a service sector. So a customer arrives at a hotel to find that there's no room available despite the booking, receive incorrect data from a research company and boarding a flight, and the seat is not available despite the confirmation. This is not very good, especially in the service industry. If you want to improve or erode satisfaction, yeah, right, you got to make sure that your check-in time, for example, the shorter the check-in time, of course, the better the service. In terms of data delivery, the shorter, the better. And you can also think about check-in time, cabin service, quality of food, kind of like in the service industry and airlines and hotels and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to make a customer delightful in terms of their satisfaction, then probably give them latent needs that they don't expect, kind of like surprise them a little bit, like maybe a free massage at the check-in, or integrating new research finding with previous research, or giving them a free upgrade. Okay, so product features over time. Over time, delighters become performance and performance becomes basic if you do not continually look at how you can find ways to continue to satisfy your customers. So make sure that they don't fall into this quadrant. What you want to do is to move them up. So this is what you need to track in terms of customer satisfaction. Measure overall satisfaction and experiences. based on attribute ratings and rate the company on the importance of products and service features. Customers' expectations, however, are basically rated on product features. For example, have they met any problems, and were these problems resolved? And the third thing is to look at loyalty, which is measuring the recommendation of likelihood to continue, or what is their favorite brand, and if there are any comparisons, and some competitive benchmarking. Okay, so now I'm just going to give you an example of how you define a composite loyalty measure. So a composite loyalty measure could be in terms of uh, relationships, which is willingness to recommend, behavior, which is willingness to continue to buy, and of course the perception, which is favorite terms of product choice. If you were to measure this each separately on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, for example, then you can basically have predominantly a sum of, let's say, 0 to 15. Okay, if let's say you're using 1 to 5, or if it's 10-point Likert scale, then it's 0 to 30. So if you want to get loyalty, of course, you want to make sure that you have 13 to 15 in terms of loyal, but try not to move down to dissatisfied, which is 3 to 7. So the loyalty index can be on a 10-point index scale, and if you divide the intersection, let's say you have 28 over 10, and then the alternate average, of course, will be 2.8, which is the alternate intersection of a loyalty measure, right? Or alternatively, like I said, you can always use the average for the respondents. That means you divide it by 3, right? Now, you can use more than 3 attributes. This is just a suggestion of using 3 attributes. Maybe some other things like willingness to let's say purchase another product along with with the product that they've already looked at, right? Or recall, that is also something that you can use. But this is just the general ones that you can use for down. So in terms of relationship satisfaction surveys, you must make sure you measure in detail the relationship between the customer and the service provider, which means make sure you get their perceptions of the product quality, range and variety, competitiveness of the offering, service culture, and of course the service experience and the ambience. Make sure that you get them to tell you about not just their perception, but their satisfaction level towards all these products. This should not be linked to an incentive or scheme. Very, very important, because when you give them an incentive or scheme, then you won't get the actual truthful response that you want to get. Okay. Now, try to do this as ad hoc as possible, maybe on an annual or quarterly, but make sure that you catch the customers off guard so that they know that there's a pattern that doesn't reveal, so you get the honest truth opinions that you want. So for example, looking at some key driver analysis of a bank, okay, if you were to ask questions in the questionnaire, you will probably ask them about overall satisfaction, you will probably ask them about loyalty measures, and of course competition. Okay, now under overall satisfaction, you want to ask them, are you overall satisfied with the bank services? And then you can ask them about satisfaction on attributes and also competition benchmarks as well. You can also ask them questions a little bit on problem resolution, which is quite important, especially in the banking service. Just to give you an example of some questions you can ask, like for example, in a survey question, based on your experience using ABC Bank's ATM on a scale of 1 to 5, then you can ask them, rate what is your satisfaction level in terms of convenience of location, waiting time, safety, ease of use, and range of facilities. And of course, all these will be rated on a 5-point Likert scale, or 7 or 10, depending on what is the most convenient and the easiest for you to do. So what are some of the attributes that you can capture, especially for ATMs and bank tellers? overall satisfaction, as I mentioned, convenient location, yeah, ease of use. In terms of the tellers, you can ask about the friendly staff, you can ask about the understandable explanation. You can also ask them about whether or not the staff conformed to the service that they were expecting to. Okay, knowledge as well as transaction time. Other certain examples which you can take your time to go through this as well in more greater detail. Now, if you notice that the previous one we looked at the product attributes, whereas this particular section you look at the product characteristics, which is the accessibility, efficiency, customer service, and so on and so forth. So there are these two ways that you can look at customer satisfaction research. So when you get all this information, how you want to measure in terms of marketing analytics, you can use the multiple regression linear techniques. Now, in the multiple linear regression techniques, you want to find out to what extent each individual measures in terms of predictor customer satisfaction as the outcome variable. And using a multivariate regression, you then measure the magnitude of the coefficients of regression reflected in the derived variable importance, which is quite a primary approach in the customer satisfaction. So for example, like you're looking at overall satisfaction, is the function of the teller, the relationship manager, the credit card, the deposit management, the mortgage, ATM, and so on and so forth. So every single one of these attributes gives you a beta number. And this beta number is also like a coefficient to tell you the higher the coefficient, of course, the more important contributor that particular aspect is to overall satisfaction. All right. So as you say, the overall satisfaction can be a function of either the attributes or the characteristics. So whatever you choose to use for your multiple linear regression as a driver or key driver analysis for customer satisfaction. So as a key takeaway for this particular lecture, you get to first understand that customer value is the way to invoke to understand customer value, to invoke customer satisfaction and further customer loyalty. Try using differentiating offerings by looking at the customer's journey based on the Kano model. Now, measure customer attitudinal loyalty as a composite perception, behavior, as well as recommendation in terms of relationship. And of course, you can think about using the 5-point Likert scale, the questionnaire, and then calculate all of that using a multiple linear regression, which you have already learned in your research methodology class. So for this particular lectures tutorial, I'd like you to go back and revisit your SPSS, learn how to do correlation and multiple linear regression in SPSS from these two videos, and refresh yourself on how to do regression analysis. Now, as an additional, because the assignment is already ready, so I want you to think about, for your first individual assignment, plan out which industry you plan to look into and why. And of course, list down the 3 major marketing issues surrounding the industry within the context of what's happening today in terms of current events. List down also what are the marketing analytics solutions that you possibly can use that will address each of these marketing issues. And then for your assignment 2, identify your group, and of course, start looking for your data sources. Where is the data going to come from? List down the objectives you wish to achieve from the analytics that you want to use as your data source, and how are these going to help the company from whence the data comes from in terms of analyzing the marketing potential and making good sound business decisions. Okay. Now, as an additional exercise I would like you to do, which is quite interesting, is that I want you to look at 5 different movies. Now, You don't have to do all 5. Each of you are going to be assigned a different movie. Some of you are going to watch what each of you are going to watch one movie, and these are the movies that I've chosen for you guys: Moneyball, The Joneses, The Circle, Ready Player One, and The Ides of March. I want you to write one single paragraph on what the premise of the movie is, and then I want you to identify what are the 5 major implications or strategies referencing the movie, ideas, ideals, and actions that can be applied to strategic marketing analytics that will impact on customer intelligence, okay, for any chosen industry. So you are required then to share your findings with the class when I see you next. So that concludes lecture 2. In the next lecture, we're going to look at how marketing mix models are built using customer buying behavior analytics. So we're going to look into understanding marketing mix modeling, some of the variables that we want to break down, as well as the customer segmentation, targeting, and positioning basics. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next lecture.